Hey everyone, today on the plastic canvas I'm going to show you how to create an outdoor base. Hey everyone, Matty from the Plastic Canvas and welcome to today's painting video. And like I said in the intro today, I'm going to show you how to create an outdoor looking base for your Mini to be standing in, just like you can see here on Brog from Gatefall. Now, basing is absolutely one of my favourite parts of painting a Mini, just the way that you combine different resources to make it look as though your Mini is standing in a particular environment. Now, if you're willing to spend the time, you can create some absolutely insane bases that just look amazing, but we don't all necessarily have the time to create a base to that detail. But the way that I'm going to show you in this video today to create this outdoor looking base is very simple, doesn't take too long, but I think is really effective in creating a very convincing look that your Mini or whatever it is that you're basing is going to be standing outside in the natural environment. So the first thing that we need to do is just build up the base a little bit, just build that ground level up to make it look as though our Mini is standing in the environment rather than on it. And so to do that, I like to create a mud sort of base that we can build up around the feet of the character, just so that it looks like as they're walking through the environment, their feet are sinking into it, and so they're actually there rather than just having been placed on top of the base separately. So there's lots of different products out there that you can use to do this job. I used to use Sterling Mud, but then a while ago I came across a video in which someone was using gap filler. And the appeal of this is that it's obviously very malleable, you can shape it however you want, but it is much cheaper than what a product like Sterling Mud is. And so I went and got some, and I haven't looked back. I absolutely love using this stuff, but one important thing I think you want to have in it if you get some gap filler to use as your earth building compound is that it does have some grit to it, just so that you get some texture. You don't want it to be too smooth. Anyway, now that I've just built up the ground a little bit, I want to add in some rocks, and so I've just gotten a cork block here. This is one that you can buy from a hardware store. You would wrap sanding sheets around this if you were going to be sanding some wood down. And so just with my hobby knife, I just took out some chunks of it, just the rough rock sizes that I wanted. Obviously, the size of the chunks that you need to be taking out will be dependent on the scale that you're working in, and then I'm just smudging them, for lack of a better term, into the gap filler while it's still wet, so that as the gap filler dries, the rocks will get locked in there. And now we're just going to base coat the rocks and the mud. I'm base coating the rocks first so that when I paint the mud second, I can paint it right up to the very edge and there won't be any little gaps in there, and it'll make sure that it looks like the rocks are in the mud rather than the mud being in the rocks, which I don't think really makes sense, but you hopefully get the point. So now we're just going to start to add just some really basic level texture to these rocks. It doesn't need to be anything too fancy. So we're just going to be hitting it with a Nuln Oil wash. This is just going to flow into all of the recesses, darken it all down, so that then when we start to do some dry brushing with some lighter greys, it'll just make all of this texture a little bit more obvious and will just help to sell that rock look a little bit more. We're also going to put a dark brown wash over the dirt area because as the gap filler was laid down, it wasn't put down perfectly smooth. So there are some lower areas for the wash to flow into, which will just add a little bit more depth. Alright, so now we're just going to start dry brushing on some texture to these rocks. So for the first layer of the dry brushing, I'm just going back to Stone Grey, which was the grey that I used to base coat with. And as you can see, I'm just dry brushing in a top-down motion, always trying to keep the brush in pretty much the same direction, just so that I don't obscure any of those recesses that the wash flowed into, because that contrast that's going to be created by the lighter greys and the black wash is really, really important to help create this texture. And so now I've just taken some Misty Grey and that Stone Grey and mixed them together for the second layer of the dry brushing, still using that same top-down motion, because what's important here is that we do have some different greys. And then I'll do a third layer of the dry brushing, which will just be straight Misty Grey, which will cover the least amount of surface area out of any of these layers. Alright, so now that our mud and rocks are done, it's time to stick down some different types of grasses, and exactly what you'll be sticking down is completely dependent on what products you have. For me, my main layer of grass is Field Grass by Army Painter. But before laying this down, I just spread some PVA glue around, and as you can see, I'm not covering the whole dirt surface. I'm just kind of almost like spider webbing it around, just so that it'll be patchy, so there'll be some spots where there's some grass, but then spots where the dirt is able to come through. And then just with my tweezers, it's really, really simple, just grabbing little clumps, just trying to make sure that it's a bit loose, so that as I put it down, it doesn't clump together, it just spreads nice and evenly over the glue. And then once I've laid it all down, I'll then just tip it on its side, tap off the excess, and then you don't see it here in the video because there isn't anything to see, but I then just blow across the top just to try and blow the excess off, but then also to stand all of those individual strands back up. If you're using static grass and you've got the actual applicator, it'll take care of that for you, but just blowing across the top does just help stand everything back up. And now here we've got a really, really cool little trick that I picked up from a video, I don't know, a couple of years ago, and that's to use green tea leaves as some undergrowth. This will just add an extra layer to your overall grass and vegetation and just add a little bit more depth to your base. So with the PVA glue, I'm just putting this around the edge of where the grass went down and just overlapping it just a little bit. And then I'm going to take the green tea leaves with my tweezers again and just lay it down. And this is just going to look as though it's leaves and various undergrowth like that that's just kind of blown its way through or is growing in and amongst the grass. This is purely just an extra layer, but the green tea leaves work just so well. So this is a really, really cool trick that does add a really nice bit of interest and extra layer to your bases. And then just to add a third layer to the grass and vegetation, I'm going to stick down some tufts of grass as well. So after these go down, there'll be the base layer of grass, which was that field grass. Then there'll be the undergrowth, and then these tufts that are sticking up as well. any of these steps are completely optional. That's one of the awesome things about basing, is that you just do the things that are going to suit the character and the area that you're putting them in. So you don't have to add the tufts, you don't have to add the field grass, it is completely up to you. But I just think these tufts just add that nice extra dimension to it, I suppose. It's just that layer of grass that sticks up a little bit more and just makes it a little bit more dynamic, I suppose, because in reality you do have different levels of grass growing in and amongst each other, and this just helps to replicate that. So they're just stuck down here and there. I like to, without super gluing them first, just position them around just so that I get them in a spot that I'm happy with, then take them off one by one and glue them down, and that just helps to finish it off. And then just to neaten up the edge, we're just going to paint black around the edge just to make it look as though the edge has nothing to do with the actual base, and it just gives the impression that the environment that we've created just extends off beyond the limits of the base. And so that's it. That's each of the steps that I always go through to create just my standard outdoor base. It is a no-fuss way of basing your characters, but I think it's a really, really effective and simple way to make them appear as though they are standing outside. So thank you very, very much for checking out another one of my videos. I really, really do hope that you enjoyed it and that you found something that you can take away and use in your own basing and your painting. If you did enjoy it, please do consider giving the video a thumbs up, as well as hitting that subscribe button to stay up to date with future videos as they keep coming out. But that's going to do us for today, so until next time, this is Matt from the Plastic Canvas signing out. Happy painting and basing, everyone. Cheers.